Before we get started, please take the time to like, add, and subscribe to our pages on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, and iTunes. Also, please leave us a review. We can wander our way over, because this is Wandering Ways.
What's Bigfoot possibility?
Clink.
Clink. Click, clack, clickety clack. How we doing? It's another wonderful Wednesday. It's
Is it?
me. Well, when this comes out, it's Wednesday. Today,
Yeah,
when we're recording, it's not a Wednesday. To be fair, I don't know. I could be Wednesday for me. Every day's just a day.
That's what I mean, is like some of our viewers wait until like a Tuesday, until like a Thursday, a Saturday. Heck, they might be enjoying Yellowstone Park on a Sunday even.
That's fair.
Have you ever thought about that?
I haven't. I just kind of go when if you're listening or watching day of. I guess I've never thought, yeah, you could be listening to it on a Tuesday. I'll just say it's a wonderful day from now on. All right.
No, I like it.
Let me rewind it, and then we'll do a real quick. Just have a wonderful day.
It is. I mean, it comes out on Wednesday, so definitely hit that notification button. So you're notified every Wednesday, so that you're having a wonderful Wandering Ways Wednesday, so you can tune in to the Wandering Ways podcast and have a wonderful. No, it's exciting, man. We've been up to some great things. We're just talking Iceland, and I don't know, maybe the viewers, you could email in at wanderingwayspodcast@gmail.com, wanderingwayspodcast@gmail.com. And you can let us know. I have an idea. I know Mark likes to hit the record button early, and we have some good conversations before the actual clink happens. So email in if you want to hear those conversations, maybe post it on the social media somewhere. Tell Mark, say, hey, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe just cut it out, clip it out. 'Cause sometimes they are gold. Sometimes I'll be listening to them again, and I'll be like, "Oh, thank God we weren't actually recording during that time."
Yeah, it's hit and miss. That definitely that content. Sometimes you see it. You see like Trevor Noah when he worked on the Daily Show, they'd do those where he's like interacting with the audience.
Yeah.
Those. I'm sure there were some of those interactions. They're like, yeah, we're not gonna post that.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Anyways, what have you been up to, my guy?
I've been painting quite a bit. Just getting the artsy flow. Like me and Matt Buddy got back from Santa Fe and Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's very artsy down there. 11th most dangerous city in America, by the way, Albuquerque. Just so you know. Cool shit though. I like it down there. It's cool. That's where I was born. Getting ready for that podcast with Matt Buddy. We finally came out on a date. So you're talking wonderful Wednesdays. We're thinking terrific Tuesdays for the native podcast with Matt and Zach. Definitely going to be interesting. We record tomorrow. We're going to actually record an episode for the first time and get it out on the docket. It's going to come live in August. I mean, and everyone's kind of doubting it. Because they're like, Matt, you're doing something with Matt. And I like it. Doubt the guy. Doubt the dog.
That's a fair point, though. Like, when it comes down to the biggest flaw I've seen in it, he is it. But if there is anything like Matt will take serious, it might be this.
Oh, 100%. This is it. This is like, he's on board. He knows what it is. We've had the discussions. He's like, yeah, man, I have like a notebook. I'll take notes before the podcast. We'll have it ready to go. It's set. It's scripted. But this is the stuff he cares about. And knowing what Indian country means to Indian people, as well as Matt himself, right? It is a high importance. This subject is, when you talk about it in the terms in which we're going to talk about it, you got to hold a respect to it. And understand that it's just coming from two guys who understand the subject of Native America, Indian country, the indigenous peoples of North America, whatever you want to call it, right? We've did some of the histories, we've learned some of the treaties, we've learned some of the rights, we live it, we work with it. And it's just kind of how we can share that with the world. So exciting to get that kicked off.
It is. It is. I'm excited to see where that goes. So make sure when it does come out that all the Wanderers at least give it a listen. Check it out, support where we can. Uh, I can't say I'm up to anything different. I'm not painting. I'm not making a new podcast. I am working. I think as of today, the day we're recording this, I'm on like day 28 straight days, no days off. So, still waiting for that elusive day, should come soon. So that's where my time's been the last month, is literally just work, work, work.
I mean, but that's what you live for. You live for like you know it. You know every spring you're going to do this. You know softball is taken seriously where you are at, and you got to be involved with it. So it is what it is.
Uh, Yeah, more so, but I work when I'm working, I'm working, but then when I'm not working anymore, it's time to get out. I feel it as much as I can. I'm like stressing that I don't have enough time for all the things I want to see in like the 2 months that I'm like, all right, we're just gonna have to fucking bust some shit out.
Well, I know that's like talking with you beforehand, where we're talking about what we're going to do. We're going to Iceland, but what we're doing after, and I'm just like, you blink and you're like, it's July 20th.
Yeah,
Boom.
yeah. No, you're 100% right. It's blink. And I mean, especially once June hits, because it's like what we got 1 week in June to prep. We're in Iceland, and then we come back. We got a week, a couple weeks, then it's like 4th of July stuff. And then once 4th of July, always a big time for both of us. It's the end, cramming in the little bits of extra summer before August hits when we got to get more serious.
I know, and it's kind of interesting how that works. How both like for me, I've talked to Matt just because with our work, it seems like we work more fall and spring. We pick up a lot more of the tasks and the whatnot because just based on what the work is, working with a lot of government employees, they have those like lose it days, whatever, for their vacation days, and they tend to take those off around summer, the major holidays in the winter, November, December time, uh to have that time, because you get like a full week off based on like the government holidays as well. So we tend to get the similar kind of days off. So that's kind of how I feel like our nature affects it. I'm thinking Six Moon Tent sent me a tent, and I'm like, I still haven't used it to like camp in yet, but I'm like, bro, it just got nice in Montana. Like, so I'm like, I'll use it. And I'm talking like me and Matt again, powwow trail hitting it. We're going to hit all the reservations in Montana this summer, I think. Might have to just journey on over to Northern Cheyenne, because that's going to be the outlier for us that we'll have to see. But we're going to drive that High Line, and we'll camp somewhere in North Montana on the High Line.
There you go. No, that would be fun. That would be fun. Speaking of like summer trips, when we talked about doing the episode we're doing today, which is hopefully a good breakdown, but we're going to do a breakdown of Banff National Park. I had to go back and I wanted to go back and look at the video from that trip to remember the views and stuff.
Right.
And like when it comes to it, Banff is pretty freaking sweet.
Right. And to me, it's one of those ones when you Google Rocky Mountains, right? It's the picturesque park. It has the Lake Louise. It has just the magnificent mountain views. You hear about the town. It's similar to like a Big Sky in that sense. People go skiing there. It's kind of resorty. And for me, I've always kind of wanted to go since I realized what Banff was. Our ski trip in high school, our high school had a ski trip that went up there, and like you raised money to whatnot. And I was just like, I don't ski. I don't want to do that, So
Yeah.
I didn't go, but people went just to go to Banff, and I didn't realize that was a thing. And I regret it because it's a cool park.
It is. It is. It's very unique. I mean, it's kind of the Yellowstone of Canada, if I if I had to compare it. But the big difference between like Banff and like Yellowstone is, imagine if you had Yellowstone. Well, I guess it's probably actually more like Yosemite, because Yosemite's close to so many people.
Right.
Calgary is only 150 miles from Banff. So you have a major city in Canada that it's like right outside, which is amazing if you're trying to go visit because it's easy to get to, but at the same time, you're going to get a lot more people.
Right. And it makes sense when you do hear about that. And then they have, I want to say they have, which is interesting to me, when you get to these Canadian national parks, because I've been to Waterton, right? And that's kind of what I like. They have like towns in the
Mhm.
parks. They have like people living in the park. They have like hotels, like these old, magnificent hotels on these lakes, um, that are historic and expensive to stay at. Like when I looked at the one in Waterton, and that was back in the day, I can only imagine how much it is now for, well, one
Yeah,
bed. And that was
to
the, yeah.
to stay on this topic, this is the type. I think you seen the hotel in Banff,
I
like
think
the
I'm looking
famous
at it
one?
in a picture. Yeah, it's right on the Lake Louise, I believe.
Yeah, no, I'll show you it because you'll absolutely, it's just like when I see it and it's just up your alley.
Well, I think I'm looking at a photo on my end that's probably a back view from it. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Wow. I was
So
looking
this
at,
is like a major league famous hotel. And I remember when Vince, Phil, and I went, both Vince and Phil were like, let's just go drive to the hotel and like just drive around the hotel for a second to make sure you see the hotel because it was like such a big deal.
makes sense. And would be down to see that and check that out. And it's interesting because you do have like the lodges in our national parks in America. Um, and you do see like Yellowstone, like Mammoth Lodge kind of resembles that. That, the Old Faithful Lodge kind of, but it's not.
Mhm.
It's more older, like man-made, where these ones almost look like the castles that you get in Europe, and then you think about the Canadian history of both the United Kingdom ruling of them, as well as the French ruling of them, and the type of architecture like that you get in those areas, like these castles that these kings and queens would build for themselves. And that's what you
Yeah.
have going on. And it's interesting because America didn't get that.
Yeah, and I have kind of a theory onto that, because if you look at like the old history of like when the national parks were coming up, it was very much, the United States was that like gritty kind of just classic. And I think the lodges really represent like that kind of what the people at that time would be about, which is in Canada, I think you have these places where only the royalty, like the queen and all, would stay at. So they built this hotel to bring in the queen or the royals. And then it's like they've built this resort that are for the like royalty or like the whatever they call it, between England and the French. And then they realized that it's on such beautiful land that they made the land a national park, but the resort was there, so they just stopped the expansion of the resort almost.
Right, which is interesting. It really is. And I like the way, because you talk about the American parks and the AmeriCorps, the
Mhm.
Montana Conservation Corps, those type of public work programs that Teddy Roosevelt put into place, built a lot of the parks in that sense, a lot of the trails, a lot of the stuff here. And you do see that. And I like that. Like you take that lodge there at Old Faithful and you look up those logs, and you can see where, like you're saying, like, yeah, here's the true grit of here's what we could accomplish. And then like you say, you go into these ones in Canada, and like I go back to the one in Waterton. It's like they built the bar, so all the windows on the bar, you're looking out right at the lake, and there's this big living room where you can stay. But no, you got to go sleep in the tent around the corner. No, I'm just kidding. But then you go like you, and it's interesting because like that sits up on a hill overlooking the lake, and then you see like the village below, the town below, and how it like lived along the lake, and how it mimics those olden days, and it makes me want to go to like a United Kingdom and experience that because of the way that the Canadian national parks are. I would like to. I'm interested in Iceland when we go to Iceland to see kind of like those kind of resemblance. I want to see how those parks are, and just some of the things
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to check out the national parks in Iceland, but I don't want to wander too far away from Banff by talking Iceland national parks because um when in Banff I mentioned the closest to Calgary and like how it's like a big park because staying in Banff the city can get expensive if you want to do the hotels, but it's
Right.
important when you're like looking at campsites to actually look pretty far ahead, like a big national park, because they'll fill up. And then what's even worse, and I learned this when we were up there, is you see like the RVs, the Travel America. So there's a Canadian version.
Right. Travel.
And I'm not saying just this company in specific, but companies like that will like buy out campsites. And so when you buy the RV package, it comes with the campsite already like bought for you. So you don't have literally you just pay the one fee. And so they don't always sell all of them. And so you'll go to these campsites that you are completely booked and you're looking around, it's like four people. You're like, what the hell?
Um, Not a bad tip if you're wanting to camp in Canada, though, to maybe book with one of those services.
Yeah, the RV services like that. Yeah, that I mean, that is a pro to it. You can just get the RV and they'll have a campsite for you. But uh, if you're
How,
not going that route, you got to plan ahead.
so you guys did camp up there. How was that experience like?
It felt very much like any national park campsite. You know, you had the same check-in, you know, one of the campsites, because we stayed in two different ones. And one of them, the guy's like, hey, we've had a bunch of bears running through the camp. Just heads up. You know, like everything I think you would hear if you were in like a Yellowstone campsite.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah,
I
it is. A lot of fun. I mean,
well,
very much a ton of fun.
that's interesting, the bears, because that was something similar in Waterton too. It seemed like there was more bears there. I'm curious how Canada treats its bear populations because there seems to be more, and I think you get more in places like even like a glacier park and up there on the High Line with the bears. I wonder if the parks do something different or they manage the numbers better in Canada versus the US. That's just because the way, like I noticed that too when we stayed at Waterton, there was a lot more
Yeah.
bears. So that's just kind of curious. And you said bears through your campsite.
Yeah, there were. We had bear, and then we saw a black bear later on in the trip up there. I don't think we saw any brown or grizzlies. But yeah, there's. I don't know. Maybe it has to do. I don't think there's as many tags for like bear in Canada, or if there is a hunting, you know. So I think that probably has to do with it. I think, you know, also farming and how readily available guns are, maybe that has to do with it. And also, maybe the Bears don't have a passport and they're Canadian citizens. They can't get across the border.
I mean, that's fair. It's fair.
Yeah.
In need of LED lights for your vehicle? Look no further than our friends at Oxteo, keeping our vehicles well lit while on the road while looking for Bigfoot. Make sure to use code RUGARU, RUGARU, on your next set of LED lights.
Hey there, Reverend. I heard that you might be running dry on your sticker supplier.
Yeah, I've been looking around and I've kind of like run out of cool stickers to buy and put on water bottles and stuff.
Well, I mean, have you seen the stuff Josh has been coming out with lately?
No, I have not.
Well, he is doing some really cool stuff with the Shop LS 574. Yes, they're working with indigenous communities and making some really cool stickers. He has a really cool Buffalo Mountain sticker. There's even water bottles, hats, sweatshirts, the whole swag. And we even got a discount code for you guys. Yes, if you use Wandering Ways at shop LS574, you're going to be getting a discount on your next purchase. But not only that, you're going to be giving a percentage of that sale to the Little Shell Tribe, as well as they donate $1 of every sale to murdered and missing Indigenous women. So just such a cool thing going on there. You know, you use the code Wandering Ways, WANDERING and you put that in there, boom, you're getting a discount.
The Wild West is full of dangers, from snakes to bears. The outdoorsman must be prepared. That is why when you experience rivers like the San Juan or the Yellowstone, you must bring a blue ribbon net. Handcrafted and biodegradable, these classic wooden fishing nets are all you need while on the river. Make sure to use code RUGAROO10 when checking out at Blue Ribbon Nets. Again, the code is RUGAROO10. RUGARU10.
All right. So, along with bears needing passports in Banff, Banff is. I remember being like hearing about Banff, and I love Banff a lot. Banff got saved on the last day. I think I've talked about it before. But the one thing about Banff National Park is there's a lot of cool shit. And speaking of cool shit, it's time for cool shit in nature. First one. I've seen a lot of news reports about the weather, so that's why I thought this one was appropriate for today. But it is a tornado.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like the one we drove through in Wyoming.
No, we didn't drive through something like that.
Just about fucking did.
I mean, we drove through tornado warnings, but no tornadoes.
No, yeah, exactly.
I don't think the tires would have done well with that.
No, it wouldn't have. We did that, me and Thea. They diverted us in South Dakota one time. We were
Really?
driving out there. Yeah, like it was weird. Like they took everybody off the interstate and put them on like a frontage road for like 20 miles and then put us back on the interstate, like the next small town over.
Oh, that's wild.
It was weird, yeah.
Yeah, that would.
Tornado, I mean, that's what happens with this freaking being 90 degrees in May and in Oregon in the Pacific Northwest.
I know.
Like
I was literally in Klamath yesterday and it was like, yesterday, but 2 days ago it was snowing. We got snows in the hills, but next week it's supposed to be 90.
It's crazy. And you're not supposed, and that, like, that's the thing. That's what I mean, we're like, oh, we're getting more of these category 5, category 4 hurricanes. Like, bro, it's here. Climate change is here. It's changing Pacific North. Like Alaska, go talk to Alaskans, man. They'll tell you. Like some of them are some of the biggest Trump loving people up there, and they'll tell you climate change is real. The salmon not the same, the winter's not being the same up there. Like it's that why how the fuck are we seeing the northern lights all the way down here in the US as much as we are?
Oh, that's different. That's different.
Solar flares.
Yeah, the solar flares have to do with the sun.
Yeah, well, maybe the Earth producing stuff, shooting it gas. Our gas bubbles are floating towards the sun and not doing good. I don't know, man. It's not good.
Yeah,
next.
That one's actually different. But moving on to the second cool shit in nature, we're going to Iceland. So I figured that the next cool shit in nature had to be something from Iceland. And it's a small village. And if you go back and listen to the Iceland planning episode, which I believe was like 2 episodes ago or 3 from now, from when this one came out, we talk about a Viking village and like a little cafe. I'm pretty sure that's the village that you will go and see.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it looks kind of like that area based on pictures. Yeah. I'm excited. I like the grass roofs that you get on a lot of houses. I like that.
Yeah.
Like that's part like I don't know why it's in society we abandon that because it serves many purposes. But I'm really excited to go see the there's an area that we're exploring. There's a bunch of churches that look like this in this one area. Um, and I hope we get to see a lot. Like there's a lot of houses like that. I assume if the churches are like that, the houses and there'll be other things up there, up on the northern end.
I'm sure.
Just based on this post and based on some of the posts you see, they see like a lot of them just come out of that Reykjavik right there in that southern area. People kind of go that like they go that bottom way, kind of like what you're talking about, to kind of this Viking town. I think
Oh yeah.
I think that's kind of the main part of Iceland where you get a lot of the pictures and the content from. Where we're going to go that north way, where I don't think you get as much content. I mean, people do, but like I don't think as many of the tourists go that way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a lot of it. Maybe people only spend like 3 days in Iceland instead of like a whole week or more than a week. So I
Well,
do
and
get if
the
you only had
budgeting
a
of
short
time.
amount of time, I'd probably prioritize that area too.
Right. No, and then the budgeting of it in the sense of like you're saying, where it's like hotels even. You give a lot of people like they don't want to spend the money on hotels all around the island and a rental car where sometimes they'll just stay in the major city. Uh
Hmm.
like there's a lot of tours from Reykjavik, a lot of tours. And I know we're butchering that name. I can't wait to learn to pronounce that the right way in certain
Oh man, I'm gonna come first episode back. I'm coming on and I'm gonna eat crow. I'll do a formal apology because I know I'm butchering this one.
right, exactly.
Yeah. But anyways, heading on back to Banff.
I got right here. You go to the Canadian National Park website, parks.canada.ca, right? Right here they say top 10 things to do in Banff, right? Visit the Cave and Basin National Historical Site. Discover the Banff Park Museum, the National Historical Site. So they have a good museum there. Soak in the Banff Upper Hot Springs.
uh the Upper Hot Springs. It's a good
Yeah.
option. We did it when we were there. It's
Oh,
like
good.
really old school. It's kind of like a historic thing. It gives off very kind of Chico vibes.
Okay, I could feel that. That makes
Yeah.
sense. And then they say number 4, meander along the Vermilion Lakes Drive. Did you do that?
I don't think we did that one.
Well, you next time. Discover Johnston Canyon. There's follow wide trails and narrow bridges with railings through canyon to waterfalls. You can take the public Rome transit to make it there. They have Summit Tunnel Mountain. This 2.4-kilometer trail to this summit provides views across the town and Bow Valley. The trailhead is a 15-minute walk from downtown Banff.
But
Um,
when we were there, we did the Valley of 10 Peaks.
oh,
Um, and we did it by accident. We found out about it like later. I actually, if you go to my Instagram, which conveniently for you guys, I prepped it. Um, but I have a picture of like in there.
well, and I think it's in the video too on the YouTube when you look at the Mark's road
Yeah,
trip.
if you go and watch that video too, it's like the road trip. You'll see at the end of the video is this. That's why I was watching those GoPro videos
When were
earlier because
you
I
a
knew it was in there.
when were you a thug, man? Beanie and baggy pants.
About 50 pounds ago.
To the Brit.
Yeah, yeah, the Brit. That's what Vince and I called it. But and then this is like that first picture, this is literally 180 degrees,
And
like
you're
the
looking
other
down.
way.
And that GoPro video, I mean, you can tell it doesn't do it justice, but looks
Yeah.
like you guys are there alone on a nice busy summer July day. Um,
Yeah,
here's another.
which comes to like the tip I really have. And again, we did this by accident. We were just wanting to hike, try and get a view of Lake Moraine, and then found the Valley of 10 Peaks. But we went later in the day, kind of like a 3, 4, where people are like starting to go to like dinner. And then we got away from the main like lodge because that's where all the traffic was. And no joke, like 2, 3 miles, and it was just us. So if you
That's
want to be alone, you got to probably get into the park a bit
It's crazy
on
how
these
that
trails.
is in those busy parks like that. Like you do like you compare it to a Yosemite, you compare it to a Yellowstone. When you hear about some of those like less traveled trails and those places that it's like no, you really can find those spots in those parks. Here's one that you probably want to do the next time you're in Banff is bike the Banff Legacy Trail. You can bike it.
I would. Oh, I would love to do a Canadian tour. Well, actually, Banff is the start of the Tour Divide.
Oh yeah, that's what James was talking about on his.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they
So,
started there. Yeah. Did you do the Lake Minnewanka loop?
no.
Oh,
We realistically we did the 10 Peaks hike, and then we went to Peyoto Lake for breakfast. We like
oh,
our sunrise and breakfast. We woke up super early uh and wanted to go check out this lake. I'll have a picture of it to show you which one exactly. Um but we woke up and then we ended up going to Jasper because from this point. So I only spent about maybe the equivalent of a day.
oh yeah, that's pretty. And that's that looks like the Lake Louise, right? Down below.
Yeah. That's Peyoto Lake though. So
Oh,
that's a different lake, but all of so many of the lakes up there have that color.
looking at it and because the Lake Louise is also it's number 9 on the top 10 things to do. But this one right here, it looks like Drive the Icefields Parkway, number 10. Is that lake part of the Icefields Parkway? This one right here you're
It
talking
it is the ice field. It is part of it.
about? Oh, so it's
Because that will take you all the way up. The Icefield Parkway will take you all the way up to Jasper.
that'll take you there.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's worth it. It's like a top 10 scenic drive in the world.
Yeah, no, I've heard nothing but incredible things. It's honestly driving driving on that Canadian like uh wheat fields, farms, driving by that to Waterton and just the way the mountains build on the land, that eastern front of the Rockies is just magnificent as is. So I can only imagine that drive. It makes sense when you look at like the Blackfeet and Canadian natives that kind of reflect, the north of Yellowstone, north of the Missouri River, right? And how they were in that area, even the Ojibways and stuff kind of on the northern part of the Great Lakes and the Crees up there, how they use those fields to the eastern front of the Rockies and those places. And just you get that vibe, the Plains Indian out there too, which is just crazy and cool to think.
Yeah. It's just overall, it's really pretty up there. If I were to go back to Banff, um, I would probably give myself like 3 days to check out more of the two lakes, Louise and Moraine, and really try to get in them. Really try to get an overview, some sort of high viewpoint to overlook the lake. Because
Right.
I think that view would be pretty stellar. I'm sure you can find a lot of others, but for some reason that one's like really sticking in my head.
Well, in Lake Louise, that's one of the most famous lakes you see, I think, with both the clear bottom canoes and the red. You see those pictures of people riding those red canoes on there on that blue
Hmm.
water. So you get that, and I think that would be really cool to do.
That would.
As well as even just see people doing it and experiencing it, because that is kind of one of those iconic things in that area.
Yeah, I forget about the kayaking. I think that would be really cool to do. Um, the water's just so pretty up there that I think, if you were on a paddleboard, I think it would be just as cool.
Oh,
Just being on that water, I think is cool in and of itself.
no, it does. I mean, there's so many things to do there. That like you said, from the hiking to the canoeing. There's even like the winter activities that they have in the
Just a
Banff.
ski resort.
Yeah, exactly. You can snowshoe, you can
Yeah.
go check out these lakes, you can, I believe, probably go snowmobiling even in the area.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure you can do some sort of snowmobile activity. One thing I forgot when you go on, like you can do these hikes to where you hike to a tea house. And so
So the
you,
more of a traditional chalet.
yeah, kind of. I guess. I mean, they're really you can go hike and take it's like usually 3, 4 miles on the hike and you'll hit a tea house. And you can do these programs or like get these reservations or maybe even I can't remember entirely, but you may even be able to just show up and like, buy yourself tea, have tea in the tea house. Because that's what they used to do. They used to hike up to have tea. So they created the tea house for them to have the tea ready for when they got there. So that's why the tradition of the tea house is.
Right. And that's like the tradition, like the chalet. I mean, the chalets are a version of that where because people can come and have their snacks or whatever, in the season. Um, I think you'd want to go almost late in the year now thinking about that to get just based on how they were. But traditionally, I think it was more when you really read the history of the chalets. I know they're built by the railroad, but
Yeah.
I think it was one of those like kind of resting points for those travelers and hikers who were on those high mountain alpine routes. Because that like those chalets, both I think Sperry and Granite Park where we stayed are on that northern continental like trail
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah.
like hikers will do on those larger trails. Um,
Hmm.
it's kind of I don't know, and then like these tea houses, like definitely, yeah, exactly. And I'm sure there's historic. You see them in the Swiss Alps too.
Yeah. No, I want to say I think my sister, when they were in Banff, which shoot, I think was last year they were in Banff. Because they did like all the a bunch of parks on in the RV.
Mhm.
And they did the tea house because they went up to Canada.
Um,
And I think they did a program where they got to have tea in the tea house.
that's cool. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense that they like you kind of have to do a program nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, kind of like we had to with the chalet, where it's like you kind of got to book it. Um, I'm trying to see here. I'm curious with the wildlife. You said you saw bears. Were there any other wildlife you guys saw opportunities? In
Um,
the area. I'm not seeing
no, I don't recall really anything.
like I guess when you talk about these breakdowns, I like to look at kind of these national park websites because they have everything like for example Banff, right? They have a checklist, right? They
Yeah.
have like get your park pass, which I think up there it's very similar to the America the Beautiful pass. You just get the one Canadian one, it goes to all the Canadian parks. uh
Yeah.
they do want you to reserve a place to stay because it books up quick in that area, so they want you to plan preemptively. Learn the wildlife rules. Basically, don't be a dick to wildlife, give them their space. um, Check the weather, go to the visitor centers, they definitely have insider tips. Be aware of seasonal closures, check important bulletins. Review the trail conditions before you go. I'm sure there's some of those trails that you and I should have done that on in our life where it's like, oh, this does get strenuous and it's not 4 miles, it's actually 8. A plan ahead for popular destinations. um and then they have a shuttle system there that they recommend, and I see a lot of national parks actually going to that type of those, especially these busier ones, going to shuttle systems that need to be
Yeah.
mentioned.
I really think the shuttle systems are a good thing. It will limit the kind of traffic and stuff. Um, it's easier to do in some parks than others. I think Banff actually I think is tough because it's kind of a big park. It's really spread out. Um,
Well, and it's interesting because you also have like the fires. They have fire
yeah,
seasons. They'll have the like if you want to go boating, like we are talking about canoeing boating, you're going to have to do those regulations. Like there's just a
yeah.
lot that comes to it.
Amazingly enough, it's all the same stuff that you should do on any trip to a national park.
I mean, you're not wrong, and it's great. I guess that like the more and more that I get older, and you really look at like the cost of what you end up spending sometimes trying to like do it yourself or do your version of it or do a cheaper version, it is
Mhm.
worth it just to spend the money and say, oh, we'll rent instead of renting kayaks or bringing your own and buying your own and bringing your own. It might be worth it to do the program like you're saying and just say we're going to pay a ranger or a guide to do this for 2 3 hours, because they do it every day, but they're still doing it in these really cool parts, versus
Oh,
trying to do it yourself.
100%. There's pros and cons to that kind of system, for the family that wants to do something and you got kids, like that's hard. You have a lot going on. So like to have that all set up kind of and have someone do it for you,
Right.
that's kind of worth it in and of itself. You're willing to pay that extra fee so that way you don't have to stress out as much.
No, and that's something like you say, the stress. I'm thinking of Iceland, like certain things that we're going to have to, or possibly if we want to pay for, where it's like, why not go ahead and book that now or book it, you know, like let's do that ice tour because sometimes those are the things on those trips you end up looking back to and be like, well, I'm glad we booked that. I'm glad we, took that, did the luau in Hawaii or did you spent that money for that pleasure on that vacation because I guess we also get stuck too, on these trips and Banff is a perfect explanation. You're going to get that there is where like you feel like you're overspending for certain things. And yes, you are, but at the end of the day, it's they're designing it and they're competing with other services to give you that best experience. So they still have their goals are to give you a good experience and to keep that in mind sometimes. That's why I'm trying. If you can't tell, I'm trying to push Mark for this helicopter tour in Iceland.
No, that's expensive as fuck, man.
I know for like a 2 hour up and down. We'll just buy
Yeah.
one helicopter one day. Fine, the walk away chopper.
That's that's expensive as hell. Um, but popping back to Banff, one other thing, and this doesn't just include Banff, but Canada has a train system, the Trans Canada, that will take you Calgary to Vancouver. And it goes through Banff, so you can get to Banff by train. But I've heard taking that is like absolutely amazing because of the views through the mountains that this train takes, which if you're looking to make a long trip or do something very unique, the Trans Canada Railroad may be for you.
Well, and that's honestly, kind of like the Amtrak one here in North America that we have. That you hear people talk about Glacier, and when you look at again both our railroad system and where it was at in its history, and Canada's railroad system and where it was at, these parks were part of that essentially, and like they were building the railroad with the full intention of saying when you look out as a passenger, you're looking at that river, you're looking at those goats, you're looking at Mother Earth, nature, right? That was definitely the design. So yeah, do it. If that's
Yeah.
something you want to do it. Sign up for it. That I bet you, like you're saying, we were talking a little bit about the wealth of like the American grit versus the Canadian royalty. I'm sure those trains have some really cool spots.
Yeah. It would be it would be a very unique trip to do the whole train through the parks type deal. Then Trans Canada, I think, would work just as good because you're seeing the Canadian Rockies, which are amazing. I'll be honest, the Canadian Rockies might be better than the American Rockies.
I think so. I think they've done a better job preserving them than we have.
Yeah.
I agree with I agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Uh, kind of closing thoughts when it comes to Banff. We still have a bit of time, but closing thoughts when it comes to Banff. It's a popular park, so when doing this, you got to plan ahead and anticipate lots of people, and then know if you want to get away from them, you do have to put a bit of effort in, but you can get away from them.
And and what I like to think, I'm looking here at Banff, is again reservation system. If you're going to go that route, reservation system, reservation system, reservation system. That's going to be the thing of the future. Um, go explore it if you're feeling it. I haven't been to Banff. I want to get up there. Um, plan that trip that you want to do. If you want to do the resorty thing and find the bars and find the resorts and that kind of vibe, they have it. If you want to do the hiking thing and get out into the backcountry, they have it. Go do it. I think that's kind of more the route I would go now. Um, I think it is one of those trips that if you plan it right, like you say, you could give it the 2-3 days of its needed time. So if you're going to make it a bigger trip, make it a bigger trip to that extended Canadian Rockies with the Jasper and the other national parks in the area.
Well, that's
But
what I mean. If I did, it'd be 2, 3 days in Banff, and then I'd pop up to do 2, 3 days in Jasper.
right, exactly, and do that because then you can get the feel and understand these parks and understand these places a little bit more than the 1 day or the lodger. Which I mean, don't get me wrong, you're going to get just as good of a trip. It because at the end of the day, it's about who you go with and what you're doing, and if you find what you're doing enjoyable, like you're the one who's going to make your trip suck, and I think Banff's one of those places that there's a lot of opportunity to make your trip not suck and to really be one with nature, but also get out there and explore and see a little bit of what I like about those Canadian parks and those Canadian Rockies. Like it is a little more preserved. So is a little more of that time capsule of looking back to what this land really was prior to European contact.
Yeah, for sure. And that's ultimately, when I visit these, that's what I look for. It's like, what did it look like before we came in?
Honestly, though, because it really you see that you see the bison in Yellowstone Park and their numbers and just the way they act, and then you go look at like in eastern Montana or eastern Alberta up in by Banff, right? You go look up at those farmlands of like, bro, there used to be millions of bison out on this prairie on these grasslands, just grass that would roam here, and they would come up, go to like go into the park. They would. There was a mountain bison. People don't realize that the bison were from Canada all the way down into Mexico, all the way over to Buffalo, New York. How the fuck do you think it got its name? And they even argue now that there was bison over in the Columbia Plateau area that they brought some over. Like they start like basically the tribes over there started breeding them over that area.
That
And,
makes sense that would happen.
and then same that's kind of what happened in Buffalo too, why they had bison over there.
Yeah. The we talk about going to the parks to see like what it was before we showed up. I do want to point out I think like Banff has done a good job at marrying the two. Because it's preserved so much while still kind of showing this, like that more modern capitalistic mindset where it's like, okay, they're developing the area. It's a resort town, it's a ski resort town. I mean, it's probably like a Tahoe-esque when it comes down to it, but yet it still feels like that big national park that they've preserved, where you don't get that as much with the national parks around here.
Well, and that's I think the beauty of it, right? Of the park. You sometimes look at some of those parks like you look at like national forest land and how some of it you argue could be national parks, but you make it a national park, more people show up, and it actually takes almost the value of the land away from it. And with like you're saying, with that, it is a fine line, and these Canadian parks have to walk that fine line because of the route they've taken. Um, you think of it, think of you if you were to put a Vegas casino at an Old Faithful, because that's what ultimately people want, right? or that
Yeah.
that vibe of like, what the hell, you get this resort right next to this cool feature where the resort almost outdoes the feature itself.
Yeah,
uh
and that's why I think Canada, or at least Banff, has done a really good job at the two, because it still has that big luxury kind of resort feel, but you also can get the polar opposite, and it's like you could go for either or, and your reasons are going is because of either or.
right. No, I like that. I think that's a great, it's a good park to do that in. And like you said, you compared it to Yellowstone early on, and kind of giving it that, like, if you're wanting to get started in the Canadian Rockies, I think Banff's a good jumping off point.
Super, super. Anyways, I've got to be that guy. We're actually starting to run out of legit time here. So, anyways, this has kind of been an all Banff episode, talking things Banff, facts about Banff, things to do in Banff, how to plan a trip to Banff. So, if you're going to Banff and you use any of the tips, let us know. But, anyways, we're gonna move on to the final words. So, final words, my guy.
Hey. I gotta just want to say thank you guys for listening and tuning into these episodes. It means a lot to us. We see it, we see the numbers, we know you're out there. We want to acknowledge that. We also want you to acknowledge us and tell your grandma, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your grandpa, tell your cousin, your auntie, your sister, whoever it may be, your brother, that ugly kid that lives across the street. Let them know about the Wandering Ways podcast, and just about these two weird dudes that like to talk nature. Get out and go to Banff. That's definitely one on my list. It's on that. If you were to put international parks, dream locations, it's on that list. I think Iceland, now that we're going there, it's getting more official. We'll pull that sucker off the list. And we have a new destination that we want to go. And I think Banff is on that list for sure. Get up into the Canadian Rockies, really spend some time. I know living in Montana, I'm close, but it's just crossing international borders, man. I don't know if it's being native. Like, it just freaks me out. Like, just like you guys, like, oh, you can't be here, like, this is these imaginary lines and stuff. So I think that's getting to Iceland, going there, I'll feel better. Canada's also the weird one. You hear, like, I don't have a DUI, so I don't have to worry about it. We got to worry with Matt. If Matt ever wants to go to Canada with us, he does have a DUI. So
Oh,
that is something to think about. Because I know they take that pretty serious. So getting into Canada, you just be safe, be smart, know the rules. Don't drink and drive. Arrive alive. And we'll be there. We'll be there one day. We'll have a better Banff episode from the Wandering Ways podcast. That's for sure. Coming soon, TBD. But until then, Mark. Oh, one last thing. Sorry, I want to shout out our friends at Hey Trip, man. Those guys, go on Amazon. They have cheap little car gadgets, car finds. They have like kayak pads for your kayak, and you put it just on your car rather than like a roof rack if you don't even have a roof rack. They just sent me a table and a camp chair, very similar to like my Helionox chair. Not as, it's a little heavier. Helionox obviously more about that backpacking lightweight, but also a nice little table too. So definitely they have like some really cool camping gear, car traveling gear. Hey Trip on Amazon, check them out.
oh, good to know. Good to know. Reverend's final words of wisdom. Stay beautiful, everybody. I can't tell you how much I appreciate every single one of you for sticking it out, listening to it all, listening along the ways, listening to other episodes. Please make sure to go check it out. Yeah, I know Banff's awesome. I want to go back. Loved it up there. Super excited to bring more episodes like this, but maybe more so about the Icelandic national parks. Looking forward to that kind of shit. Um, just go out there, be good people, experience nature, live life, you do you. And with that being said, peace out, everybody.
Bye.